Chapter 7 Bread and Firelight. The evening of the secret Burke dinner approached quickly. Master James wanted everything to be perfect, and had Miss Butterfield prepare an elegant meal to be served discreetly in the West Wing, in Briar West. Mr. Pritchard had been granted 3 days' leave, and having a sister he had not visited in nearly 2 years, he departed early that morning to catch a train north to York. With Miss Merriweather also out of town, moving about the house undetected by the servants would be much easier. Master James had crystal vases filled with 3 dozen blackthorn roses brought into Briar West, while Emily and Margaret worked diligently, cleaning, tending to the heating, and ensuring the bathroom was in order, and setting an elegant table. The fireplace would be lit later in the evening after the servants had retired, and with dinner set for 9 o'clock p.m., this posed no difficulty. Miss Butterfield would also be able to escort Constance Burke and her daughter through the side servants' entrances and up the back stairs entirely undetected. Miss Butterfield had already briefed Constance the previous evening on the suspected plot involving Sir Alister Vale and Silas Grudge to frame Mr. Roger Burke and William. Constance had also read in the morning paper about Mr. Crabtree's hanging. She was tense, eager to see her son, and determined to devise a plan to clear her husband's name. Billy was both nervous and excited. Jimmy had selected a handsome outfit for him, a rose-pink satin shirt in Constance's favorite color, new black leather shoes, suspenders, and a black velvet tie. Jimmy felt Billy would look quite the gentleman. Jimmy had secretly and meticulously written out ideas in his journal to help Mr. Burke escape. Plan A involved forging a note in the Earl's name, accompanied by a gift of cheese, imported chocolates, and rare wines. The hope was that the police on duty would indulge themselves into a drunken stupor, allowing Jimmy and Billy to slip in unnoticed and free him. Plan B felt more plausible, though not without its own risk. Using Blackthorn stationery, Jim would forge his father's signature to authorize Mr. Burke's transfer to the Dover jail, relying on a constable Constance had known before her marriage. It was a dangerous gamble, but with convincing paperwork they might be able to move him out of town and get him safely to the cabin in the Kent forest. The plan would require meticulous execution. Plan C was to leave Mr. Burke in jail and hope that upon the Earl's return he would be released. But with Silas and Vale plotting, matters could escalate quickly. Jimmy knew both his family and the Burkes were in danger, and time was not on their side. Jimmy also considered using ladders from the side building, but there would be no way to locate Mr. Burke's cell or see through the heavy iron bars without risking detection. The crawl space beneath the structure was too narrow to be useful, and there was simply no time left for further reconnaissance of the jail. At precisely 9 o'clock p.m., Billy and Jimmy were in the Briar West salon, the room transferred by candlelight into something almost ceremonial, crystal glasses catching the glow, shadows moving soft along the velvet walls. Billy dressed in an elegant plum-black velvet suit with subtle amethyst accents, looking strikingly composed despite the tension beneath it all. Emily had laid out hors d'oeuvres with careful precision, stuffed wild mushrooms, miniature quiches, and imported cheeses accompanied by 2 steaming pots of the finest tea. Mrs. Burke entered with her daughter Sarah, both dressed in their finest pink gowns. Sarah, now 10, moved quietly beside her mother, taking in the room with wide, attentive eyes. Billy paused as they entered, and something shifted in his expression, an almost distant awareness breaking through the evening's tension. His thoughts flickered briefly away from the present and landed unexpectedly on his own approaching birthday. He had never forgotten. His 13th birthday was coming up on March 13th. 13 on the 13th. Billy ran to his mother and held her tightly. For a moment, all urgency softened into something steadier, relief, recognition, and a fragile sense of safety. Miss Butterfield joined them quietly, taking a seat on the sofa as though she had always belonged there. She poured tea for the guests with calm precision. Her presence eased the room without drawing attention to itself. She wore her finest dress, a cream gown with delicate lace and pale yellow floral details that echoed the soft tones of her blonde hair. Master James observed proper Victorian protocol, bowed, and formally introduced himself to Mrs. Burke. She stepped forward without hesitation and embraced him warmly. "My brave boy," she said softly, "thank you for making this evening happen." Sarah was happy to see her brother, but at 10 years old she already carried an unusual composure, aware, attentive, and far more mature than her age suggested. She held herself still for a moment, taking in the room, the faces, the quiet urgency beneath the civility. Then she spoke clearly, her voice steady. "Mother, we should move from niceties and begin discussing what we should do about father and how to protect ourselves from the danger of Mr. Grudge and Lord Vale." Miss Butterfield had already outlined the available options to Constance in detail. Constance began carefully weighing each word. Even asking a favor of a friend who is a constable, asking him to put his life on the line is too risky. What if he betrays us? We cannot be 100% certain. James spoke more quietly now, thinking through each step. "Well, that only leaves the plans where I forge father's signature. I know I can do it. We could have a footman deliver a basket of chocolate, cheese, and wine. Perhaps Miss Butterfield might know a way to ensure the guards are incapacitated." A brief stillness followed the suggestion as the weight of what he was proposing settled over the room. Miss Butterfield nodded at once. "Indeed, I can add a sleeping tincture to the wine. They would be unconscious within minutes." Constance leaned forward, her mind already organizing the sequence. "Then I will bring the basket of wine and cheese, along with the forged letter, and present myself as there to visit Roger. I have the legal right to do so. That will allow me to observe the cells firsthand. We can also establish a signal to indicate when the coast is clear." Billy interrupted. "I thought of that, but what if the other cellmates alert the guards?" Constance interjected. "Well, I already thought of that. What if I release the other prisoners?" Jimmy hesitated. The weight of the plan pressed more heavily now. "Well, wouldn't that be risky? We'd be breaking the law." Miss Butterfield excused herself and stepped into the adjoining room. She was gone for a few moments. When she returned, she carried an elegant tarot deck, silver-foiled cards that caused the candlelight and shimmered faintly as she moved. Everyone fell silent. Miss Butterfield shuffled the cards slowly, repeatedly, until the rhythm of the motion seemed to settle the room itself. For a moment she sat still, eyes lowered, as though listening to something beyond the salon. Then she set 3 piles to Constance's left. The cards were drawn one by one, laid out with careful precision. Candlelight flickered across the silver edges as she studied them intently. At last she spoke, her voice firm, certain. "Spirit has revealed to me that this plan will work. This is what we will do." She looked to James. "First, James, you will forge the letter to the jail, a formal note of thanks for the apprehension of Mr. Crabtree following the attack on Master James. It will state that the Earl now believes Roger Burke, faithful employee of nearly 10 years at Blackthorn Manor, has been wrongly accused. In gratitude for loyal service, a basket of rare wine, cheeses, and chocolates will be sent as a gift." Her gaze shifted to Constance. "Constance, you will deliver the basket yourself under the guise of a courteous visit to Roger. This will allow you to observe the jail layout and timing firsthand." Then she turned slightly toward James and Billy. "James and Billy, disguised again as country girls, will wait near the corner where the jail window is visible. If necessary, you will be prepared to act and keep the prisoners quiet while Roger is extracted. The horses will already be hidden near the town for a swift escape back to the cabin in the woods." A pause settled over the room. "It is dangerous," she admitted softly, "but it will work. The cards show justice, truth, and luck are aligned in your favor." Miss Butterfield continued, her tone sharpening with urgency. "We cannot wait. It must be tomorrow. The waning moon and the sun conjunct in Pisces will veil the escape. There will be no hitches, so let us get to work." Jimmy had already prepared the country girl disguises and now presented them to Constance and Sarah. "Wait until you see Billy in this dress," he said with a grin. "He's honestly the prettiest girl you've ever seen." Billy immediately flushed crimson. As Jimmy began laughing with Sarah, he swung and punched him lightly in the arm. Dinner was soon ready, and Miss Butterfield had prepared one of Jimmy's favorite meals: apricot chicken, asparagus almondine, and a light spinach souffle. For dessert, the kitchen girls assisted in creating an elaborate cherries flambé. The elegant meal eased the tension in the room. Conversation softened, shoulders loosened, and for a brief moment, confidence settled over them all. That somehow the plan truly would succeed. After dinner, Miss Butterfield and Constance gathered everyone into a circle in the attic space. On the wooden floor, they marked out a series of symbols in chalk, strange, deliberate shapes that resembled Celtic runes. Jimmy asked quietly, "What are these symbols?" Mrs. Burke leaned down and kissed his forehead gently. "These are powerful charms of protection, not only for all of us, but for your parents as well, Jimmy. Your parents will come home only after the plan has run its course. Be brave." After the ceremony, Jim placed a record on the Victrola, and a soft waltz filled the attic space. For a time, the room seemed almost weightless as everyone moved in gentle circles beneath the lamplight. Jimmy danced first with Mrs. Burke, then with Miss Butterfield. He was courteous, careful with his steps, letting the rhythm carry the room rather than himself. He offered Sarah his hand for a turn, but she only smiled shyly and remained where she was, watching. Across the room, Jimmy saw Billy dancing with his mother. Something tightened briefly in his chest, an unexpected sting of jealousy that he did not quite know what to do with. It passed quickly, but it lingered at the edges of his awareness. He thought, too, of their private waltz and how it had been the best moment of his life so far. Jimmy suddenly broke down and tapped Billy on the shoulder, asking quietly if he could dance with his mother. Mrs. Burke immediately noticed the shift in him. "Dear one," she said, softly pausing mid-step, "whatever is the matter?" Jimmy was overcome with emotion. "I'm so sorry, Mrs. Burke, about your husband. Billy and I tried really, really hard in Kent, and I don't want anything to happen to father or mother or any of us. I think I'm a bad person." Constance looked at him, confused and alarmed. "Master James, what?" Jimmy's voice cried. I wanted Mr. Crabtree dead for hurting me. I wished it, and then he hung himself." His breath caught as the words finally broke loose. "I think it's my fault." He turned away and burst into tears. Miss Butterfield, Constance, Sarah, and Billy gathered around him, holding him steady as he trembled. "Listen, lovey," Miss Butterfield said quietly, "you did not kill Mr. Crabtree. He was an unwell man, cruel and unstable. His attack on you was not of your doing nor your responsibility." She paused, choosing her words with care. "What happened to him belongs to forces beyond you. Your heart is not what caused his end." Constance gently brushed Jimmy's hair back from his face. "You are safe," she added. "You are here, and you are loved." Miss Butterfield continued, her tone softening. "Your heart is not dark, Jimmy. It is open, and it feels everything deeply, and that is why this hurts. But that doesn't make you guilty. It makes you human." She squeezed his hand lightly. "You will be rewarded, not for wishing harm, but for the courage and loyalty you've shown, and some things you hope for are already quietly moving towards you." Billy interjected, voice firm but warm. "Yeah, we're blood brothers now. I've got you. Listen, Jimmy, I've got you." Constance watched the two boys carefully, something shifting in her expression as she took in the depth of their bond. It was no longer simple friendship or shared adventure. There was a loyalty between them that ran deeper, forging through danger, secrecy, and trust. Constance walked to the table and poured herself a glass of champagne. The room quietly, slightly, as she lifted it, the candlelight catching the glass. She raised it in steady hand. "Welcome to our family, Master James. And you too, Miss Butterfield." Later, well into the early hours of the morning, while Billy, his sister, Miss Butterfield, and Constance played parlor games in the soft glow of the lamps, James worked quietly at the writing desk. On official blackthorn stationery, he carefully forged his father's letter. He studied an existing business correspondent from his father to a London bank, comparing strokes, pressure, and rhythm before attempting the signature. When he finally presented the result to Miss Burke and Constance, both leaned in closely, astonished at the precision. The resemblance was so exact it unsettled them, almost indistinguishable from the original. original. This will work perfectly. Master James folded the letter with care, aligned each edge precisely before sliding it into an envelope. He sealed it with deliberate steadiness, then pressed the official blackthorn signet into the soft blue wax and printing it cleanly. The guests finally said their goodbyes before the crack of dawn, and Jimmy slipped away quietly to his suite through the secret passageway.